Hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, A Master's Degree in Learner-Centered Education, a case study conversation with the Aurora Institute and Two Revolutions. We're so happy that you are able to join us today. We're going to give you about 2 more minutes to get settled, and I'm bringing a few more people, and then we will get started. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar. We are really excited to share with you this master's program that's been brought to us by Two Revolutions. Before we get started, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat? Please share your name, role, organization, location, and what brings you here today. I also wanted to share some quick reminders of our meeting invitations. Please bring good intentions and pay attention to your impact during the webinar. Engage with agency and an open mind. Accept and expect non-closure on some items and have fun while doing good work. All right, and while folks do that, I'm going to take a moment to introduce us to our panelists today. My name is Jennifer Kabacher. I'm the Chief Programs and Partnerships Officer at the Aurora Institute. So excited to have this great panel of folks here today to tell us about new approaches to master's programs for in-service educators who are seeking to bring competency-based education to both their own learning and to the learners in their classrooms. We have Catherine Thorne, who's here from Two Revolutions. We have Dr. Corey Steiner, who's superintendent of Northern Cass School District in North Dakota. If you haven't had a chance to get up to Northern Cass, I highly recommend it. It's a great visit. We have Tammy Cabral, who's a middle school teacher at Waianae Intermediate School in Hawaii. And then we have Julia Miller, who's an education consultant with West Ada School District. Thanks to all of you for joining us today for this conversation. I want to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. The Aurora Institute acknowledges that this virtual webinar takes place on lands that have been home to Indigenous people since time immemorial. By focusing on whole child real-world application and learning in context, competency-based education uses similar principles to traditional Indigenous education. Whether intentional or not in the initial design, we acknowledge that CBE ideas reflect traditional Indigenous education approaches that long predate CBE. We want to take a moment to honor the ancestral grounds that we are collectively gathered upon and support the resilience and strength that Indigenous people have shown worldwide. Specifically, we reflect on the impact of colonization on Indigenous people through education systems that marginalize and suppress their traditional knowledge systems and ways of being. And we encourage you to explore whose native land you are living on at the website at the bottom of the slide. Quickly, before we dive into this conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce the Aurora Institute. We are an organization that has existed since 2003, bringing both policy, practice, and convening to educators, administrators, leaders across the education field with an explicit focus on education transformation through the lens, in particular, of student-centered, personalized, and competency-based learning. We value being student-centered, equity-driven, future-focused, credible, knowledge-driven, and collaborative. And we look forward to engaging with all of you today to help make that work a reality. Thank you. When we talk about competency-based education, we're talking specifically about our vision for education transformation that's captured in the 7 points that you see on the left side of the screen. In the competency-based education, competency-based education systems we envision, students are empowered daily, they take meaningful assessments, they receive timely and differentiated support, they progress through their learning based on demonstrations of mastery. They learn actively with varied pathways and pacing. There are equity strategies that are used daily to drive culture, structures, and pedagogy in their classrooms. And they are guided by rigorous common expectations that are defined by meaningful competencies. The graphic that you see on the right side of the screen is our illustration of how all of these different elements of CBE work together to develop a more equitable, effective, and meaningful education system for all learners. And now, without further ado, it's time to get into our discussion. So when we think about that CBE definition that I just shared, it's important to realize that the way that most most educators come out of their teacher preparation programs today is not necessarily ready to teach in that type of system. To ensure that every educator in the system is able to both experience competency-based education for themselves and provide it for their own learners, we have to make some real meaningful changes to how teachers are both supported before they enter the classroom and after. We're excited to introduce you all to one such program that's doing exactly that, that's designed particularly in mind with bringing competency-based education to all, and that is this master's program for in-service educators that was created by Two Revolutions. As I mentioned before, we have Catherine Thorne here from Two Revolutions to tell us a bit more about that program. So Catherine, I'm going to lob a question your way to start us off. As I mentioned before, this program is fundamentally different from what we typically see in educator master's programs. The curriculum is designed to support educators in creating a more learner-centered and equity-centered experience for learners. When this program was being designed, can you tell us a bit about what you were trying to solve for, what the problem was, and how that's reflected in the design and the experience in this master's program?
Absolutely. First, thank you everyone for being here today and for inviting us to join this conversation. When this program was first developed, it was really centered around exactly what you were just talking about, Jennifer, where if we want our K-12 educators to be able to create a competency-based system, then they really need a different mental model for what education could look like. And so when the program was designed, it was really centered around three different goals. The first one was on different outcomes, outcomes for students, but really different outcomes for educators themselves. They needed different skills. So starting with what we wanted to be true for our K-12 learners, we worked backwards to identify the knowledge, the skills, and the mindsets that the educators and leaders would need in order to design a different type of experience. The result was a degree pathway that is truly focused on developing the educators that our students deserve. An example of a difference might be our first, one of the initial courses that educators in this program will take, called Learner-Centered Approach to Communicating Growth and Outcomes. Among others, this course is deeply rooted in Joe Feldman's work and aims to give educators specific strategies to shift feedback and communication practices in the short term, while advocating for needed grading and reporting changes at the systems level in the long term. So it's really taking that what can I do now while we're building for the future approach to giving educators some tools and some, do tomorrow steps in their classroom. The second goal was to deeply model the type of learning we want for our K-12 students in a way that is appropriate for adult learners. So the courses are designed using a cycle of learn, apply, revise, and reflect, just like what we would want for students. The application-based job-embedded approach enables participants to experience firsthand the methodologies that they're going to implement with their students. This helps the educators empathize with their students as they begin to make those shifts in their instructional practices. The last goal was really so that the impact of the program can be both broad and deep, with a key differentiator being its cost effectiveness. We aim to bring together educators from across all contexts to learn from and with one another. And therefore, the program is being offered at a tuition rate of just over $13,000, making it accessible while maintaining a high value. And for folks who are earning their second master's, 12 credits could potentially transfer into an EDD program with Spalding. So just a bit of an overview as a way to give people some context.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Catherine. Now I'm going to ask Julia and Tammy, could you join us with your cameras, please? I've got some questions for you. Awesome. Thanks so much. So I'm wondering, to kick us off, Julia, maybe you can start and tell us why you chose to pursue the master's degree through the True Evolutions program compared to maybe some of the other options that were open to you.
Absolutely. I knew that I wanted to pursue a master's degree just for advancement, right, in education. But I kept looking for something that would align with mastery orientation or CBE of some kind. Couldn't find anything. Really tried to, but couldn't. And so when in the network I was in shared this great program, I was so excited, and I knew I had found like what I needed to pursue.
Great. Tammy, how about you?
Well, I've been taking a lot of PDs, and the area that I'm teaching, I'm always looking for ways, how can I get my students engaged? And I have middle school, so I'm thinking of all these strategies. So when I saw this, program that was offered, I'm like, first of all, I'm like, okay, the price is right. This looks like something I could work. And then the partnerships, between our union and everyone else that was involved, Two Revolutions and the Spalding. And I felt when we went to the orientation, everything was so well organized. And I was like, this seems like something that I could actually, pursue. Because it was a process, but I saw that the cohort, everybody was strong together. And it was the first day. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty interesting. Everybody was, it felt so organized and doable that I knew it was going to be a lot of work. I knew it was going to be, I had to put in some time, but it seemed doable. And just based around the learner-centered things and the things that I've been wanting to learn, um, and looking at the courses, I'm like, I think this is where I need to be. And so that's why I was totally invested, and I knew this is where I needed to be.
Awesome. Yes, I love this concept of doable in particular. We know educators are busier than they've ever been historically, and keeping that doability, the asynchronous work, the ability to do things on your own time, and to also have the work that you're doing in the classroom recognized is so important in this day and age. I'm wondering if you both could share a bit more about how this learning experience has been unique compared to some of the other professional learning you've participated in. Tammy, why don't you start us off this time?
This one, this one, again, like I said, I was bought into it. But it really allowed me to, again, build with my cohort. I made a lot of friends, and they actually became so close that we still talk till today. So this program has definitely grown us as a family, I would say. But it's gained a lot of confidence in what I'm doing in the classrooms now. It allowed me to step outside of the box. It gave me, that ability to like what Catherine was saying, we learn it, we applied it, we reflected, we had to fix it, go back in. So the program really made me dive into things that I guess I never thought I would do. I mean, even like creating a podcast, I never dreamed I would do one, but it kind of forces you to look at the each course and say, um, like, how can I do this where it's meaningful to me? So I can bring this into the classrooms now and go, okay, how can I teach this lesson so that it's meaningful to each of these students? Because I had to do the same. So I felt like what I was learning, it created that space for me to understand how to do it in my classroom because I was the student at that point. So it was a really great program. And again, I get, the cohort building, the teachers, the professors, everybody was just so accessible to understanding where we were and how we were moving along. They understood that we were struggling. They understood that this is new for all of us, but it was a program where we was, again, learning, applying, reflecting on what we were learning, taking what we already was doing in the classrooms and making it and shifting it. And so that really created a lot of good things, positive things in my education process.
Julia, how about you?
Absolutely. I totally have to agree with that. So for me, it was so unique in clearly like three clear ways. One was theory. Um, Theory is everywhere in education, right? There are so many great ideas floating around out there. And my problem was I couldn't find where the rubber met the road. I really needed support in taking theory that's out here and applying it into my classroom with my students. And then in my coaching practice, how do I get other educators on board with this? And so the theory was a big piece. I think a great example of that is when you take classroom management and you get an A+, and then that first day in the classroom, you know, there's not a lot of things really that class probably prepared you for. And we so often in education think that there's two processes to learning, where we learn the thing and then we do the thing. But this program overlaps the two, where you are learning by doing with the performance assessments. And that just was amazing. I think the second thing, Tammy, you absolutely hit the nail on the head there. The community that is made when you have a cohort of learners learning with you. I still have them, you know, in a group chat, and we talk all the time. So any problems that I have, any strategizing I need to do, I can always turn to them, and they're right there to listen. And then lastly, I think there's this game we play in all classrooms where we need to figure out the professor and how they want to do things, and really play that people pleasing kind of game to get the A. That is completely removed in this program. There are competencies that are so clear and transparent, and the goal is to get you there, right? And you don't have to perform, I feel like. So that's, yeah.
Great. You just said you don't have to perform, so I'm not trying to pick on that, but you did mention the performance tasks, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about what that's like, because that feels very different from what one would experience in a traditional master's program.
Right. I was thinking today, you know, about all of the great papers that I've written throughout my life that are just lining garbage bins, right? And how we have assessments that are for a teacher to give us a grade, and those assessments aren't necessarily creating anything in the world. And the performance assessments in this program really are all application. It's saying, we're learning about personalized learning. Now go do it in the classroom. And then see where you're making mistakes, reflect on that, and let's get better together. Does that answer that question a little bit?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Tammy, anything you'd like to add about that performance assessment part of the program?
No, but I do want to say that I've shifted a lot of my learning. You know, like Julia said, we really kind of learned it throughout and then came back into the classroom and really, yeah, I saw some huge changes in my students' performance just because of the shift that I've made as an educator from this program. So, you know, and I guess we could talk on and on about how the shift that's, you know, that I've changed as an educator through this program. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, actually, my next question is about exactly that. So if you would entertain me for just a moment, Tammy, can you tell us maybe a specific example of how you've seen your classroom practice change since you started the program? And tied to that, how have you seen those practices affect student outcomes or student work?
So, you know, again, I've said it many times so far, I think I've learned a lot through this program. This kind of questions really, it gets me really emotional because I think, you know, as a teacher, you know, I used to feel like, okay, I'm the teacher, I just give instructions and then you guys go do the work. But a lot has changed from this program where I feel like I've given the students a lot of time for, you know, wait time is a big one, right? I'll give them time to say, okay, hold on, like Tammy, Ms. Cabral, I'll give them time to answer their questions. So I give them a lot. I've worked on wait time. I've changed my seating arrangements in the class to make it, you know, comfortable. I have a section where I have, you know, a calming section for the students. I've changed a lot. I've put in a lot of conversation, discussions, and I've seen a lot of success through students middle school now, so they want to go to the bathroom all the time. So now because the class is so much activities going on, I've seen them cut down on asking me, can I go to the bathroom? Can I go take a break? So they're really starting to enjoy the things that we're doing, hands-on kind of things. Having them make choices in the projects that they're going to deliver, not putting them in a spot where they're going to feel like they don't know what they're doing, you know, The minute I learned about the power of yet through this program, I went out the next day and ordered the signs from Amazon and put it up on my wall, and we discussed it in the class. And okay, you're not where you need to be, not yet, but that's why we're here together. We're going to do it. So I really found us building relationships among themselves, among me and them, and it was just huge. That was the number one thing I think that I needed to do was have a class, making the students feel that they have a purpose, that they're here, why they want to learn, make them feel like, why do I need to learn about social studies? Who cares about history? So it really made them understand, making it relevant, making them get involved, making them have those choices was a huge change for me. And I learned a lot of those strategies through this program. I actually opened up a Google Classroom and I have it all saved, all the good resources, because I still reflect on those that can help me continue to help my students and help other teachers around that's going. I remember setting up my room and they're like, what is that table for? I go, oh, some students need to stand instead of sitting in the chair all day. And they're like, that's cool. Like, and then they would come and watch, and people started to get excited about some of the changes that I was making in the classroom. So it really it gave me confidence in who I was as an educator, my purpose. I found my purpose. I found who I am and why I'm doing this through this program. So it really changed me as an educator. So I thank you guys. Sorry.
Thank you, Tammy. That was beautiful. Julia, try following that one up.
I was gonna say this is gonna be so hard. But I mean, just like Tammy, I don't think there's a part of my career that has not been impacted by this program. It has just been so beneficial. I think as a learner, as a human, I started to shift my mindset. And I mean, even the roles that we take on in a classroom, like I'm a teacher and I'm a student, and that kind of stops being so important. And it's just learning together. And it just becomes a really beautiful thing. And I think there's a part of that where we kind of have these hierarchies within those roles. Like we look at students as less than sometimes, and we're kind of deficit framing. And, you need to get up here where everybody else is. And when we stop doing that and we just look at a learner for who they are and what they're bringing to the table, oh my goodness. I mean, it's amazing to see what students can do when we get out of their way. I think secondly, as a classroom teacher, I was able to have more tools and strategies in my classroom to really be a responsive educator and be more that guide on the side, that facilitator, rather than someone imparting that knowledge. And then lastly, and probably the thing that is most scary about all of this is as a district consultant now, I have the ability to speak in rooms that will impact whether learners are at the table or not. And so this program completely enabled me to do that and do it well. I would not have been able to do what I've been doing this year without this program. So I'm also very, very grateful for that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julia. Dr. Steiner, I'd love to turn it over to you to tell us a bit about how you all are engaging with the master's program in Northern Cass. So my first question for you is, what drew you to want to make this master's program available to your educators in the district, and what specifically felt unique about it to you?
Yeah, thanks for having me today. I would say there's a few things that drew me to this. Unfortunately, the system we have set up typically for teachers to advance in their pay has been simply about obtaining a master's degree. And so a lot of times it becomes either a checklist that they go through to get that move on the salary schedule, but very little impact on kids is seen. And it's very theory-based, and Julia probably wrote many more good papers than I did, but papers don't teach kids. And we wanted a program where our people would learn, be able to bring back immediately, implement, and ultimately impact kids in a really positive way. And then, like you heard Tammy say, impact the educators in a positive way. I think this work around learner-centered education is not easy work. It's extremely time intensive. It's extremely emotional. And to know there's a group of people out there that you're working with to do this, I think was another piece for us to say, you'll have others that you can look at and know you're doing the right thing for kids. So for me, it was the idea of it's going to impact kids and it's going to impact educators. That's the best of anything in our world.
Great. And how did this program align with the goals that you have for Northern Cass? And maybe you can spend like 30 seconds talking about um, the great work that you all are doing over there in Northern Cass. You walk in that building and you know that something different and special is happening.
Yeah. Thanks for the shout out to Northern Cass. I'm pretty biased, but pretty proud of the work we've done. We say we're brave before perfect. We're a personalized competency-based learning system. And we've worked really hard to try to put learners at the center of all decisions and the learner at center at teaching and learning, giving them voice and choice and agency as they develop the right skills to become choice ready, which is college, career, and military. And so we've redesigned our entire system, tore it down from one that was really successful in a traditional sense of four-year college and test scores to base it around experiences instead of content. And so when I had educators come to me and say, hey, there's this whole program about learner-centered practices. Hey, there's this program that's even got Northern Cass being talked about in the program. I was like, yeah, that seems like that might be a good match. And then for them to say, and I can do it in a way that is competency-based, so I can bring that back to my kids and I will show kids how I'm modeling what they are to do in my learning center. Like it was one of the easiest decisions to make in terms of like, how does this align? How does this fit? I mean, it could not be any better for our district and what we're trying to accomplish.
We love an easy yes, particularly in a time when it can often be hard to get to one. Um, and what impact have you seen it have on your educators and the students as a result?
Yeah, so I'll think to my PE educator who was in the program. Really wonderful. The kids all love Mr. Yu. But what I saw is I now walk into a PE classroom and it doesn't look like a PE classroom, not the ones I grew up in. And granted, that was a while ago. What it looks like is I see visible tracking for the kids and they can see exactly where they're at. And we're not going to just run around, but we're going to build skills. And then I see them talking about the skills and how they apply outside the PE Learning Center. I go out there and I see them running to a station and then reading parts of a book because it's important to be across the curriculum and to build in literacy skills. And most importantly, what I saw an educator who went from somebody that was really great at relationships and was trying to figure out where they belonged in terms of practice, come out of there with confidence that what they were doing was absolutely right for kids. And then the other part that they grew in confidence was that others could walk into their learning center and take things in a PE elementary room with pre-K kids and go back to their AP Chem course and absolutely apply it. And I think it just helped everyone, and especially him, see like there's value and worth at every level. When you put kids at the center, it is really a remarkable thing. Because he's a different educator now. He was good. Now I would say he's great.
We heard both Julia and Tammy talk about the network of educators that they went through the program with. Are you seeing that same effect among your participating educators? What has
Yeah.
that been like?
Yeah, I mean, they'll come in and want to share something that they've done, and say, hey, this school district leaders, you should reach out and contact them. I'll get you information, and then they're connecting us. I got a chance to sit in one of their defenses for the end of their program. And when I sat in there, I heard them talk repeatedly about the cohort of people they worked with and how impactful they were, and that they weren't just somebody on the screen, they were friends. They were people that they were sharing life experiences with. I will say a lot of programs say they're cohorts, but often it's only in name only. A cohort is about an experience with a group of people. And it includes the learning and the love and the heart and the mind. And that's what our people experienced.
That's great. Julia, Tammy, I know that both of you are also bringing a bit of a system level perspective. Julia, you working now in the consultant role, and Tammy, you mentioned that there's sort of a network of folks, I believe, in Hawaii that are participating. Do you have anything, either of you, to add from sort of the system level change perspective?
I guess I'll go. I think it's so interesting when people who have never heard of this type of learning, when they see it, it can be so transformative. And so if you haven't seen it, go see it. And yeah, there's so many great schools out there doing that work. I've been to Northern Cass. It was phenomenal to see the great work there. And we just got back from Philadelphia and got to see, Building 21 and the great work they're doing. And it's just, go see it. It's transformative.
Thanks, Julia. Tammy, anything to add?
No, I just think that it's a great program. I think that the teachers and the people that's using it is creating a great buzz, and more people want to do it. I know that the second cohort has started it, and my advice to anyone is, you got to go through it, give it time, but you got to just do it, like just go in and take that risk and step outside the box and start making those changes as soon as you're in it. So if you can follow that and, know that you got to take the risk and really buy into the program, then you'll do great things.
Thanks. We're about to open it up for Q&A, so if folks have questions brewing, please enter it in that Q&A box that you see the button for along the bottom of your screen. But before we get there, I have a question for all of the panelists, and Catherine, that includes you too, which is, given what's happening with this master's program and each of your priorities moving forward, how do you see yourselves leading student-centered learning for your school or system or organization moving forward? And Dr. Steiner, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll approach this a little differently because as superintendent, I mean, I have to lead the system on that. But here's the part that this program did that I don't think I realized. It's actually empowered the educators to be leaders in the system, to be experts in the system. They've gained credibility because they've been immersed in the work. And I think that was probably an unintended consequence from my side, is now I have someone that I can say, hey, I'd like you to run PD, and they feel confident to do that. Hey, I need a thought partner or somebody to mentor our new people so they can start to understand this crazy thing called learner-centered. So I think it's allowed more leadership from different positions that you wouldn't normally think of.
Thanks so much. Catherine, over to you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump in on that one. So, within this program, we talk about leadership as dispositional rather than positional, for exactly that reason, Corey. The idea that this work can be done by any one person or even a small team is just not realistic or sustainable. That person leaves, the work leaves with them. And so it really needs many hands, many hearts, many minds to be able to, grab hold, take hold, and really create a school that is appropriate for that particular context. And so if this program can send educators out into the field with the knowledge, the skills, the mindset to include that leadership disposition so that they can become the leaders of change within their schools, then we have accomplished one of our goals. We talk about this program is designed by educators for educators. And it's a commitment on our part to continue to position educators as the folks who can and will create the schools and systems that their communities need.
Thanks, Catherine. Tammy, it looked like you were going to jump in before.
I was just gonna say that that it did empower me to have a voice. And, since after the program, I went and talked to, of course, our admin team here and said, hey, I want to do more. I want to start to help with mentoring teachers, the new teachers, or any teachers that may need some help. So currently I'm in a mentorship program, hoping to get my certificate in mentorship as well. But it definitely allowed me to it empowered me to have more of a voice and to share the things that I've learned and what works. You know, I see data that's shown me that the students have learned from this and that the outcomes are huge enough for me to not keep it to myself anymore and to go out and say, hey, this works, we should try it. And so I think the program taught me a lot to, okay, here, what are you doing in the classroom to make these changes? Okay, the next step they taught me, how are you gonna start to share with others? And, a lot of the teachers used to say, this is good, Tammy, now go share it with your admin team. And I'm like, okay. So that was a hard thing for me to do, to share success stories. But then I learned that sharing was growing us as a school and growing me as an educator. So it really gave me confidence to want to do more. So that's where I feel that's what this program has done to me. It's allowed me to start, mentoring and helping others learn about the good things that this program has brought. So thank you again.
I love that natural extension of the mentorship program. That's really inspiring and exciting to think that you'll have formal pathways to share more of this learning with others. Julia, would you like to turn on your camera? Yep, and share. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think for leading this work, I think there's a few things that we're really working on with telling the story of competency-based learning and everything that we've learned through this. A few teachers in our state have done this program. We've done it together, and we're planning to take, this state by storm, which is pretty exciting. And then for our schools, so I have 3 schools, and we're really working on personalizing PD for our teachers, just like the program has modeled for us. What does it look like when teachers can really set their own goals and determine their needs of, how they need to grow in their own classrooms? So that's kind of where we're heading. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. All right, so we are going to open it up for Q&A. Folks in the audience, if you have questions to ask, there's a Q&A button at the bottom where you can enter it, and I'll lob it out to our panelists. The first comes from Michaela and Catherine. I think it's for you, which is, how large is each cohort at the master's level?
It is as big as the number of folks who sign up. Typically between 40 and 100 is what we've been running. We try to group people according to, grade spans, content areas, but we also are looking to help folks make connections across grade spans and content areas in other classes. So it's done strategically to allow for collaboration, the relationship building. A critical component of the program is that learning from and with others, in addition to the coursework and the faculty members. So the cohort model really is a critical differentiator for this experience.
And when the group is larger, is it broken down into smaller groups to like facilitate those personal connections, or how does that work?
Yes. Yeah. So we the synchronous sessions are going to be run 2 different ways. One is like whole group, because we need to recognize and see who's in the room. And so those are exciting, amazing events when when you're able to connect with the entire cohort all at once. But then for the actual learning experiences, for the synchronous learning experiences, where they're broken down into smaller sections of approximately 20.
Got it. And then Michaela also asks, what percentage of students are school or district leaders as opposed to classroom educators?
At this point, it's a smaller number, simply because most district leaders are looking for that, that EDD at this point rather than the MAD. But depending on the role or what you're looking at, again, this program, the 12 credits can be transferred into the EDD program. So it is a good fit for some. We've had several assistant principals in particular go through this, and a few folks who actually have that EDD, and have been curious about using this program simply because the curriculum or the experience, the skills are not something that is found in those more traditional experiences. So smaller numbers for sure.
Do folks have additional questions? Exercising a little wait time, as one does during these things. Ah, yes, Michaela, you can ask a third.
Mhm.
Waiting for that third question to come on down. Ah, here we go. Michaela is wondering what you all leave out that's normally in a master's in education program, and how is that decision made? So, Catherine, in cases where you all had to get choosy in your competencies.
Um, so an MED is really just like the level degree, but there are a range of different focus areas, right? There's an MED in secondary science education, you can get an MED in curriculum instruction, you can get an MED in leadership. So this one here is specifically focused on learner-centered practices. So it really wasn't about what we left out, it's what we chose to include, right? What are those key, critical, high leverage practices that we wanted educators to have experience with? How are they seeing their students differently? How are they focusing on relationships? What does it look, sound, and feel like to put students at the center? How do your roles change? In a learner-centered system, teachers don't teach. You're in classroom where students are learning, right? And shifting that mindset of I'm here to support learning. But what does that actually look like for curriculum design, assessment design? So you're still getting the instruction, you're still getting assessment, you're still getting, dare I say, classroom management, but you're doing it through a learner-centered approach. So it's not necessarily the what that is left out, it's the how that has shifted. And
Thank-
Michaela, if that doesn't answer that question sufficiently, you are absolutely more than welcome to jump on the website and look more. And then there's a link there to actually schedule some time with me. And I'm more than happy to dive into the details with you if you're more curious.
Thanks, Catherine. Now, Crystal asks, does the Master's in Education and Graduate Certificate follow the same overall timeline for completion?
Yes, it does. It's approximately an 18-month timeline from start to finish to earn the MED. And I'm assuming that's what you meant by the graduate certificate. But I might need clarification there as to
Yeah.
what you get to.
Crystal, feel free to follow up in the Q&A thing if you need further clarification. I'll ask Catherine that question. Michaela is wondering if there's any research that they can read about the program and its impact.
I don't know if there's actually like external research at this point. No. That's something that we are in conversations with our friends at Aurora. You might have heard of them, to be able to do some digging on the impact of these learning experiences in particular.
Great.
But from a more general perspective, there's definitely research that I can share if you're curious around the impact of taking a more learner-centered approach within, K-12 schools and systems, and what it means for adult learners themselves to experience it.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Folks, if you have any additional questions, we've got a little bit more time. Feel free to put them in the chat. In the meantime, I'm going to make a quick plug for our next webinar, which I'm realizing the date on here is wrong. It's Wednesday, March 12th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern, not March 11th, but Wednesday, March 12th. So we hope you'll be able to join us to learn about the history of federal investments in research and development, as well as why it continues to be vital and some opportunities for increasing those investments. Oh, and then we just have another question come through, Catherine. How hard would it be to complete the program if you're not currently working in a classroom?
So the program is designed for that authentic application, but it's also differentiated by role. So I think I would need to know a little bit more about your specific role to see if it can be adapted. We've had folks who are not in the classroom, but they are in they're still associated with the school. So it is possible as long as you're associated with the school. And that's, again, it would be like a one-on-one conversation is probably the best thing for me to be able to hear specifically about your unique situation.
So it sounds like they need a classroom with students to practice and collect evidence for some of the competencies that they would be demonstrating.
Correct, or students, or a school with teachers, because it can also be done from the perspective of how are you modeling this with your adult educators within your school in terms of the professional learning, the support, this not, I don't want to say supervision, but the support and the feedback that you're providing to your educators within your building. So as long as you're working within a school system, the program will work for you.